So I have been asked multiple times about my thoughts on this whole Brie Larson thing. Though I've done some videos on Captain Marvel, I have not all the way dove into Brie Larson's overall effect surrounding the film. So I took some polls on my social media, and this is something that many of you guys want, some of you don't, but I think those that do, they just want a legitimate take with reason behind it. So rather than, I guess, doing a video sort of adding fuel to the fire, I like to express to you why that fire exists. So this video will be useful to those that seem to be completely confused by this. Let's start here. I could not personally tell you any other film that Brie Larson has acted in. Her being announced as Captain Marvel was the first I had ever heard about her. I'm not like a movie buff like that, as I'm not really interested in those sorts of things. I'm more interested in the overall theme and the subject matter of the movie. You could get a stunt artist that I've never heard to act in a role, and I wouldn't care either way. And I generally do not go out of my way to research like the personal opinions of actors and actresses, because I don't care enough to really do that. If I know of their views, it's because I was notified. Plus, the vast majority of Hollywood seems to have the same exact political opinions. So I had no connection to Brie Larson before she was announced as Captain Marvel. She wasn't the most notable actress, I can say that. This is important, and I'll highlight why here in a bit. As far as Captain Marvel, the character, is concerned, she's not that liked of a character. Carol Danvers was better received as Miss Marvel, but not that well received as Captain Marvel, which is who she didn't become until this recent decade. But Marvel has seemed to put this unique backing behind this character, and this is indicative in the fact that she has had her series relaunched like numerous times over the last 6 or so years. It's hard to say exactly why they've done this. Some allude to the fact that Marvel doesn't really have that standalone female character, or those standalone female characters that aren't really driven by a team association. There are many well-loved female heroes, but many of them simply aren't liked, and they aren't as notable without their team affiliation, such as Rogue or Storm or Jean Grey with X-Men. Now, DC, for example, doesn't have this problem because they have characters such as Wonder Woman, who is embraced even outside of the Justice League. Hell, they have female villains that are interesting too. This, however, is just a theory. But what cannot be refuted is the fact that Marvel is committed in backing this character, even though there are so many people that not only find her uninteresting, but thoroughly disliked her, and this was long before the promotion of this film. This is why almost nobody outside of the comic book nerds even knew who she was. She isn't this iconic character. She's not part of pop culture like Wonder Woman, for example, is. There weren't hordes of people wanting to cosplay her, be her for Halloween, or even talking about Carol Danvers as Captain Marvel, or even Miss Marvel for that matter. There's a reason why she's just now being sort of plastered. You had to sort of be part of this niche in order to even know of her existence. Don't take my word for anything. Just go look at her appearances and things outside of the actual comics. She's only ever made these brief cameos, and I mean really brief cameos, prior to this past decade. Of course, even that was more so as Miss Marvel. She just popped up, and Marvel is clearly trying to put their resources behind this character. Danvers has existed for decades, but is only just now being put everywhere. Usually there's more of a balance with those loved characters, a mix of resource backing to promote, but also embracing by way of the fans, which is self-promotion in itself. Or promotion in itself. With Captain Marvel, it's totally lopsided, where there's little organic acceptance, but really heavy promotion to make you sort of like this character or know about her. She had little to no momentum before this film was announced. I'll put it to you like this. When Wonder Woman gets a film, the general reaction is, oh snaps, a Wonder Woman film. When Captain Marvel got a film, the general public was like, who the hell is Captain Marvel? So you have a character that seems to exist more so to bring fans in, as opposed to having that large or noticeable or notable pre-existing base, if you will. The character is relatively unknown to people outside of the comic book nerds, but there's no secret that the Marvel Cinematic Universe right now is popping with fans that really exist outside of the comic book realm. Make no mistake though, Captain Marvel is especially unique. Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, Captain America, Black Panther, Spider-Man. These are iconic characters that are simply part of American culture. They are known by people that don't even read comics, so their popularity predates their headlining movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And you got like Ant-Man and Doctor Strange. They aren't really iconic like the others outside of comics, but they are very known and embraced by people within the comic book community, and it has been this way for decades. So Carol Danvers as Captain Marvel is much like Guardians of the Galaxy, where they had very little momentum before being depicted and were virtually unknown outside of the comic book community. Guardians were recently established within the last decade or so, though some of those individual characters have existed long before that. Characters like Nebula and Drax are very important in the comics to Thanos' history. So Carol Danvers as Captain Marvel is unique because she's not introduced as being part of a team, and she had no momentum going into her live action film, yet she's getting her own headliner. Understanding this, there are lots of questions that the community had once promotion started for this film. Why is this character popping up right now? They slid a movie right after the largest cliffhanger ever in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like at its peak, and right before Avengers Endgame. And though we have no idea what role she will play, we are led to believe that Captain Marvel will somehow play a role in Endgame, considering that Fury is seen paging her as this last-ditch effort. When those people were all disappearing due to Thanos' infamous snap. So you're incentivized to go see this movie, which is genius from a marketing standpoint, but that doesn't mean that it is without question or concern. A character that is not liked by a decent number of the community and has no momentum is being made to appear as the savior at the peak of this universe. And this is where Brie Larson comes in. She and Captain Marvel have been set up for success. The numbers of this movie will sort of be inflated, if you will, not because anybody cares about the character of Brie Larson, but because of this universe, what takes place before and of course after it. Because of this, I've long said that this movie will do decent, maybe even good numbers, regardless of what anybody has to say about it, no matter if the movie is good or bad, and it could go either way. It may be a good movie, maybe a bad one. But if Brie Larson just played it easy, there would be only those initial talks and confusion as to why her and why now. But that's not what happened. Instead, Brie Larson has made some odd comments about white men and has admittedly made this movie about her and her own personal activism. And she has not sort of shied away from using this platform to speak on her fully leftist politics and social justice. These are things that a lot of people are gonna take issue with. So now she has many people speaking against her, and it's for the most part a self-inflicted wound. And because of this angle, this Mary Sue type of approach, any criticism has been met with claims of misogyny, which is this scripted, typical response. It's lazy, it's completely untrue. She has, though, presented herself as this prototypical elitist, white Hollywood leftist as far as I'm concerned. The funny thing is that there are other characters within the same Marvel Cinematic Universe that have actors and actresses that are leftists. They just aren't as obnoxious, and their timing wasn't as such. Like I said earlier, I'd argue that 90% of Hollywood actors are full-blown leftists that don't know what the hell they are talking about. Chris Evans, who plays Captain America, is a leftist and has been saying some of the dumbest stuff on Twitter, but he didn't go full-blown arrogant Twitter leftist until, well, after the character was established, Captain America, that is. The same goes for Mark Ruffalo, who is an insufferable, loud leftist. But again, they weren't as obnoxious when they were first casted, and they represent these two iconic characters. Brie Larson is putting her foot in her mouth while representing a character that most people don't even like, and we are just now being introduced to her. This is heat that she brought on herself considering the circumstances. So this isn't completely unwarranted, and blaming the misogynist incredibly stupid if we compare this to Wonder Woman and Gal Gadot as an example. Gal Gadot had a much more uphill battle as she had to represent the OG female superhero, living up to those expectations. She also didn't have this extravagant universe that Marvel has, as the DC universe wasn't doing nearly as good, nor was that foundation laid, or as laid as the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Yet she killed it on the promotional trail. She's far more charismatic. She's likable. She didn't say anything too out of line, even though she also was portrayed as this beacon for female empowerment. She might even be a leftist, though I don't know. And that speaks to the point. Gal wasn't going around trying to insult a specific demographic, which happens to be a big chunk of the comic book community, right as the movie is about to be released. The character was already loved, but she was loved as an individual, if that makes sense, which only helped her in this movie. People that weren't going to see the movie weren't as animated about it as they were in telling people they aren't going to see Captain Marvel. That speaks volumes. Generally, when I'm not interested in a movie, I simply don't see it. But something is being done if you have waves of people going out of their way to say they are not going to see this movie. It's Brie Larson's persona and timing. People have grown more and more tired and gotten louder and louder about being preached at regarding social justice. I understand that some of you guys are in this echo chamber, right? And it may make you oblivious to this idea, but Hollywood politics, believe it or not, are not representative of all individuals. No amounts of virtue signaling, counter signaling will change this, even as you try to diminish people by claiming that they're trolls or incels. It won't change this. But that's the disconnect, because people think they can swing at people and then claim foul when those people swing back. And I'm not an actor, but I'm relatively doing decent in my little tiny sector in the music industry. And I've long accepted that my personal straightforwardness about my politics, my social views, it puts a spotlight and a target on me. I know that it ruffles feathers. I'm an unapologetic anarcho-capitalist libertarian. I piss people off just by existing. I piss off centrists when I clown on them for thinking that they're above the fray, though a centrist with his positions flipped is still a centrist. I piss off standard conservatives when I criticize police officers or the military, and I piss off mainstream leftists the most because I criticize them the most, and I'm anti-socialism and reject these concepts of social justice. I'd be a damn fool to be thrown off if a demographic that I loudly spoke against decided to reject that. This is basic communication, basic human interaction. So as a word of advice, look at the more Gal Gadot model going into Wonder Woman's release if you want to see people embracing female superheroes without any issue. Don't blame the misogynists. If you want to blame anybody for what is taking place, blame Brie Larson. Nonetheless, the movie will do fine and make a decent amount of money. It's set up to do just that. But that has absolutely nothing to do with Brie Larson. She's only hurt the potential, if anything. If Gal Gadot played Captain Marvel and approached it in a similar way that she approached Wonder Woman, it would do even better than what it's going to do now. But Brie Larson is a default, and the success of this movie has nothing to do with Captain Marvel, the character, because she's never been popular. She's never been that popular. It has nothing to do with Brie Larson because the success will be despite her. And it has everything to do with the simple fact that this movie was sandwiched between the greatest cliffhanger in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and after the greatest villain in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And right before an epic showdown in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That's it.